raised concerns his client could be in danger. You're watching Velshi Rule right here on MSNBC.
Anytime you try to do the right thing, you're in
Sponsored
danger.
by Tesla.
Anytime.
Learn more.
That's the society, the toxic environment that we live in today. Let me get this over here. Right about there.
Tweets about the whistleblower and...
Hang on, let's back it up. Right there. There we go.
Welcome back to Velshi and Rule. Today, President Trump is fuming in a series of tweets about the whistleblower and whomever gave him or her the information that led to their complaint. Now, this follows this tweet from last night in which the president said, quote, "I want to meet not only my accuser who presented second and third-hand information, but also the person who illegally gave this information, which was largely incorrect, to the whistleblower," putting whistleblower in quotes. Was this person spying on the U.S. president? Big consequences. Now, in the wake of last week's announcement that House Democrats would open an impeachment inquiry, the president has escalated his attacks on the intelligence community, all of this prompting the lawyer for the whistleblower to write a letter to acting DNI Joseph McGuire stating, quote, "The events of the past week have heightened our concerns that our client's identity will be disclosed publicly and that as a result, our client will be put in harm's way."
Joining us now is the author of Crisis of Conscience, Whistleblowing in an Age of Fraud, Tom Mueller. Tom, let's go from whistleblowing in the age of fraud to this specific case. If this whistleblower's identity were to be revealed, whether it's their choice or not, what are the potential consequences for that person?
Well, it's essentially protected by law. The anonymity of this person is protected by law for a very good reason. Within their work community, they might well be ostracized. In this particular political environment that President Trump has helped to create, the results could be even worse. He's talking about they're labeling them as spies, suggesting they might be rubbed out in the old-fashioned way. This is a very explosive environment. There's even a talk of a bounty being put out on their anonymity being revealed. So I think the lawyer for the whistleblower is right to be concerned.
You know, Stephanie,
can I just ask one more question then? Isn't that amazing? If a whistleblower's identity is protected by law, why is it that the President of the United States would be calling for that person's identity to be revealed? Doesn't that sound crazy?
It don't sound crazy if you understand the mind of a mafia mobster. No, it don't sound crazy. You're not dealing with a regular ethnic moral man pertaining to Donald Trump. He don't understand that these are departments that are hired by the taxpayers to make sure that people like him does not act like some sort of a tyrant in a third world country pertaining to a dictator or some sort of a communist ruler of some sort. That's the whole purpose that the system is set up the way that it is. So that there's not somebody that gets in power that winds up wanting to abuse his powers and his authorities that the people gave him. That's the whole reason. And now you got somebody that's basically wanting to put a hit job out on somebody. Put a contract out on them. We are living in very, very troublesome times whenever society today can do like they done back in the Wild Wild West days towards putting out some sort of a wanted dead or alive decree, and that hit job basically gets handled by I forgot what they called those people back then. They was something like bounty hunters or something. Whenever you put out a bounty on somebody, they had bounty hunters back then. Donald Trump actually thinks that he can do that because he's that, I don't know if the word is that far in behind times or if he's that demented to the point that he thinks that he can legally do that to one of his own citizens. especially those that are hired in various departments of the government, that is part of his job. That's the part Donald Trump don't understand, because Donald Trump thinks that he is the government. You're dealing with somebody with a disorder. You have to remember that. You're dealing with an individual that has some sort of a major disorder.
No, it's the first rule of the whistleblower destruction playbook, and that is shift the message, shift the spotlight from the messenger to from the message to the messenger. Shift it from the wrongdoing that the whistleblower is alleging to the background of the whistleblower. What did they do in high school?
In other words, cause a diversion. Get people confused and mixed up. That way they don't really know what to think. Because now you're focusing more on the message, or more on the messenger, than you are the message. And the thing about it is, let's back this up a little bit. The thing about it is, the message of what Donald Trump done should be the main focus, not the messenger. That's basically what they've done to me. They've done the exact same thing to me. I had a message that I promoted to the church society as well as the open society, the open population, and because they didn't like the message that the messenger, which is myself, that was promoting to them for 30 plus years, they attacked the messenger. They done the exact same thing to other prophets. They done the exact same thing to Jesus Christ. They didn't like his performances. And because they felt intimidated, because they felt worrisome about maybe people in other positions that felt like that their jobs was in danger, they started bringing up all kinds of accusations, fake, phony accusations about Jesus Christ, to the point that the whole mob become disoriented. And the next thing you know, the main messenger that was bringing the message to the people now all of a sudden got blurred. It got tainted. It got confusing. And this is the handiwork of the devil. The devil is the author of confusion, the Bible says. The devil's out to kill, steal, and destroy. This is the handiwork of the devil that can actually take a group of people, a whole society, a whole culture, and manipulate their minds to the point that now they're thinking of this versus thinking of that. To where the whole time you would have thought that people that sat and watched a man turn water into wine, walk on water, raise the dead, feed a multitude with only 6 or 7 fishes of 5,000, heal the sick, heal the blind, endless amount of miracles that Jesus done that never was even recorded in the Bible. You would think that that group of people would look at Jesus in the light of, well, this man has come to help us, not hurt us. But that's not what the Pharisees done. The Pharisees used trickery of the hand. They used basically magic or magicianry, to the point that they convinced the people that no, this man isn't a good man. This is a bad man. This is a man that is mad. This is a man that is committing blasphemy because he's saying that he's a certain way. And they convinced the mob, and the next thing you know, Jesus' own people created a mutiny that caused his very death. We see that again and again and again throughout history, especially whenever it comes to people trying to do good. Just like this whistleblower. They're going to try to focus, or Donald Trump is, he's trying to focus, the main focus, on the messenger versus the message. It's a trickery of the hand. And if you don't watch, he'll do it and get away with it. And the next thing you know, the rest of the people will say, oh, well, I guess that was a fluke then, wasn't it? And they'll move on to the next showdown with somebody else. We see what's going on, or those that has a good understanding of manipulation can see what's going on here. And not only has it went on here, or trying to go on here with this particular whistleblower, but it's gone on in my particular life. And if it's gone in my particular life, and if it's going on in this particular individual's life, how many other people has it done the exact same thing? Those who are stepping out into the Me Too movement towards trying to tell the truth about an event or a happening that it happened, and because they're outnumbered, all of a sudden they get looked down upon, they get degraded, they get chastised, they get demonized, they get dehumanized. And that's exactly what happened to the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255.
Kind of.
Let's back this up a little bit. Right there.
Doesn't that sound crazy?
No, it's the first rule of the whistleblower destruction playbook, and that is shift the message, shift the spotlight from the messenger to from the message to the messenger. Shift it from the wrongdoing that the whistleblower is alleging to the background of the whistleblower. What did they do in high school? What kind of person are they? What reasons might they have for all of that is completely irrelevant. We need facts here. Does the whistleblower supply good facts? If they supply good facts that Congress can follow up on, can investigate, can call witnesses, can find documents, then that's good.
What he just got to saying is 100% accurate. It doesn't matter if this whistleblower spent 20 years in life with parole pertaining to killing somebody. It doesn't matter about the individual's past necessarily towards what he or she was a part of before this ever come about. What matters is the facts of what Donald Trump was saying to another international leader or another countryman beyond the United States of America, trying to bring up trash upon his opponent.
Don't care what's in the heart of the whistleblower.
Okay,
if they can't, that's another matter.
If I may, then I understand you're saying it comes straight out of the whistleblower destruction playbook. But we're not talking about a playbook. We're talking about the President of the United States. Wouldn't advisors to any president say
Don't
to
touch
him,
this, don't do this. This is way beyond the pale.
it's against the law?
It's against the law. That'd be a simple one.
Yes, I would agree with you 100%. The answer is that I think this is what the advisors say and what the president does may be two different things. I have, in the 200 whistleblowers that I've interviewed for my book, I've constantly seen this same pattern of retaliation and systematic destruction of the credibility of the whistleblower in order to distract from their allegations.
I'm going to bring this up, and I realize that this is getting off beat just a little bit pertaining to what's actually happening with our president right now. But whenever I was growing up as a child in this area, churches thrived off of good testimony. And whenever I say good testimony, they was actually looking for preachers who had crawled out of the dumps, per se. Somebody who had a miraculous turnaround in their lives to the point that this is the way that they was versus this is the way that they are. Today, the churches don't look for good testimony. What they look for is somebody that supposedly has a squeaky clean record. Somebody that hasn't never even so much as gotten a speeding ticket, much less been arrested, much less had any type of drug addiction or any type of alcohol addiction. They're looking for somebody that fits the same criteria as somebody that's perfect. And that's the very opposite in who and what should be a good leader. A good leader is those who have went through the fire and been purged, who has had their armory cracked to the point that now the light is devouring the darkness and actually expanding beyond their shield or their testimony, to the point that now it's affecting other people's lives. This country's been turned upside down. Not just politically, but morally and spiritually. And if the government wasn't steadily handing out people's checks pertaining to disability, retirement, etc., 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 this country would have already been involved in a civil war. And what they're talking about right now, if you listen to the rest of this, may actually escalate into a civil war, because Donald Trump is kind of making those predictions that if this gets down and dirty to the point of an actual being impeached from his job, that it will wind up turning into a bloodbath. He's already made that gesture. Please listen.
Play the treason card to distract attention from the real treason.
So let's
back up again, because I distracted you.
Whistleblowers that I've interviewed for my book, I've constantly seen this same pattern of retaliation and systematic destruction of the credibility of the whistleblower in order to distract from their allegations.
Right.
Play the treason card to distract attention from the real treason.
So
right.
Stephanie and I come from the business world, where whistleblowers have generally been very helpful. CEOs and executives who are up to malfeasance don't like them, but there's just this treason thing doesn't come into play. There's a general disloyalty accusation that's leveled against them. In a world where it's about government stuff, and we move into sensitive territory here, because in some cases it's classified material, it is controversial. What's the difference?
Ali, I would actually argue that they're very, very similar in the sense that we're talking about matters of loyalty and matters of obedience, and matters in which an individual is able or not able to follow their own conscience, whatever their team and their leaders are telling them to do. Only a few people can do that. A lot of people, I'm sure, in the Situation Room in the White House were watching with big pinwheel eyes what was going on, but only one person came forward, and I think he's probably the clearinghouse for a lot of concerns. But the treason, loyalty dichotomy, that happens in the corporate world as well.
So this is an interesting point, a clearinghouse for other concerns. Others have described this as a roadmap. In other words, what Congress or the intelligence community is supposed to do with this complaint is say, let's follow up and see if any of this is true. President Trump is putting everything on the idea that this was second or third hand information. Giuliani has said it would not be admissible in a court of law. It's not meant to be admissible in a court of law.
It is totally legitimate and widely used that whistleblower complaints of all description bring in second and third hand information to corroborate, to suggest. This is an extremely valuable, as you suggest, Ali, and it's extremely valuable document to guide Congress in their investigations. Again, we come back to facts. Are there facts at the basis of this complaint or not? If there are, the Congress will find out. They will subpoena people, they will get documents, and they will corroborate. If they can't, then that whistleblower is in big trouble, and rightly so. If they can, then we don't really care who this whistleblower is, and we should not be asking that question because it allows us to divert attention from key things.
Okay, but in terms of asking that question, does it not seem odd that Rudy Giuliani is accusing the whistleblower of having second or third hand information, whereas a private citizen who has no ties officially to the United States government or our administration, Rudy Giuliani has no access to private or secure information? So how is it that he could say, don't take this person's information for truth, take mine, when how could Rudy Giuliani have any sort of secure information?
Absolutely right. And I think that, again, we have a question here of diverting attention. And frankly, many whistleblowers have told me in my interviews, I hate the word whistleblower. I was just doing my job. I suspect that this person was just doing his job. I mean, he saw a conduct that he was very concerned about. Others around him agreed that this was a concerning fact pattern that was unfolding. He reported it through legal channels to the IG, and that IG made an assessment that it was urgent and credible. And I suspect the IG, in the process of making that assessment, may well have heard those witnesses, may well have studied some of those documents. That's how you determine whether something is credible. So I think this person is really an individual doing their job. Now, some close observers of the intelligence state have speculated that this is kind of a palace coup, that Brennan and Clapper and so on are behind this and so on. Now, again, that's a way of distracting attention from the facts. Are there or are there not strong indications, provable indications of wrongdoing? If so, I don't care who's behind this. And if not, we don't care anyway.
Right, we shouldn't, that shouldn't be the issue, right? Either it happened or it didn't, and if somebody's got evidence to prove that what the whistleblower is alleging didn't happen, we're all over that. Bring it.
And as we've seen countless times, in countless contexts, in corporate and in government whistleblowing, destroy the messenger, and the message goes away.
And think about all the whistleblowers we've covered in business. Their lives have more often than not been ruined. They certainly find a very hard time getting employment afterwards. Some of them have died.
Some of them have died, without a doubt.
Tom, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that.
It's oftentimes why in the corporate world there's a big settlement. Those people ruin their careers.
Correct. It's very hard to get a job after you've been a whistleblower because nobody else, even if you did the right thing, exactly the right thing, companies don't tend to like that. Governments don't tend to like it. It's hard to act on your conscience. Tom Mueller is the author of Crisis of Conscience. All right, we got some breaking news regarding President Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president at the center of the intelligence community.
Before we get involved in any more of this right here, I just want to weigh in on something else that is leaning towards my conscience. First of all, I made reference to the fact that this country was 231 years old, based around the fact that we originally started up in the brotherly love town, Philadelphia, and then eventually moved down into the Maryland area. I was incorrect about the statement that I made of this country being 231 years old. It's actually 240 years old, based around the freedom of tyranny against English rule. Secondly, I don't know who it was that blew the whistle on Jim Baker and Tammy Baker pertaining to PTL. I just know that that individual spent 5 years, I believe, 5 years. He may have gotten some time off, Jimmy Baker, off for swindling the people as far as promising them one thing and knowing that they wasn't going to be able to fulfill that promise. The third thing that I want to make mention of before we get involved back on the president is that Jimmy Swaggart's ministry, working through the Assembly of God Association, before he got busted nailing a prostitute, that particular organization was drawing $1 million a day from the general public. $1 million a day. And various people in the Assembly of God Association knew that Jimmy Swaggart had this problem. But because there was so much money involved in this swindling campaign, various people kept their mouths shut, in which I think those should have been the ones that got shamed publicly and went to jail the same way as PTL. I believe it was 2 state troopers that actually blowed the whistle on Jimmy Swaggart. Now, what happened to those state troopers, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, what the individuals just got through, those news commentators just got through telling you about, whenever people try to do the right thing here in America, they usually get penalized, punished, degraded, demoralized, desensitized to the point of people ostracizes themselves from them. That is the type of toxic environment that our society right now is living in. Rather than shake their hands, pat them on the back, give them a medal, give them a congressional whatever, society, by and large, wants to stomp on them and kick them down a hole. Well, this stomping and romping is going to soon come to an end with a country at almost $23 trillion in debt and 2.3 million incarcerated prisoners here in America. All the divorces, all the hanky-panky, all the lies, all the fake news, all the aftermarket medication, all the expensive whatever is soon going to come to an end. Because if you'll read the first 4 chapters of Revelations, it speaks very clearly towards who's going to be holding the flame thrower. And it's not going to be no particular individual, but it will be done supernaturally through the evangelical realm, the beings that will come and gather up the elect from the 4 corners of the earth. But as they're coming, gathering up the 4 corners of the earth, they will mutilate this planet towards everything that has been built commercially as well as residentially will be burnt down to the ground. That will be the beginning phases of the Great Tribulation. That, my friends, you can mark it on the wall, you can chisel it in stone, you can graph it in to some forbidden hidden cave somewhere, because that is where we're at the brink of destruction, falling upon to not only America, but falling upon to the whole world. Whenever God says enough is enough, that means He's fixing to lay the hammer down. And whenever it comes to all this hokey pokey stuff going on down here, we're right at the precipice, the pinnacle point towards this going in one direction or another based upon to humanity. And so far, for the past 30 years, according to what I've been seeing, we're steadily going in one direction. And that's the direction of destruction coming from our Heavenly Father. And whenever He does this, there will not be no questions, no ifs, ands, buts about who done it and why He done it. People better wake up to these injustices that are happening, not only here in America, but all over the planet, pertaining to the rich trying to dominate the poor.
Whistleblower's complaint, and who in the White House opposed him making that call.
Joining us now, NBC News White House correspondent Kristen Welker. Kristen, what's the latest?
Well, this comes from a team of us, myself, Carol Lee, Courtney Cubie, and Kelly O'Donnell, who've been talking to our sources, and we've determined that the president's former national security advisor, John Bolton, was not on that call that you just mentioned, that July 25th phone call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine. And in fact, he was opposed to the president making that call in the first place, concerned that he would veer off topic and potentially air some of his personal grievances, which frankly he had been doing in the public square, talking about some of these accusations against corruption in Ukraine. Now, we've also determined that Vice President Mike Pence was not on that call. No indication of why. Significant, though, certainly to know who was actually a party to hearing that call in real time. Now, it comes on this remarkable day when we're hearing from John Bolton for the very first time since he left the White House, and Bolton making it very clear that he disagrees with President Trump's foreign policy on some key issues as it relates to North Korea and as it relates to Iran. Bolton indicating he doesn't think that Kim Jong-un has any intentions of ever giving up his nuclear program, and indicating that the United States needs to show more strength, in one instance saying it's time for more U.S. involvement and leadership, more and not less. So remarkable that the president's former national security advisor, who left only a few weeks ago, is speaking out publicly for the first time today, making it clear that he has some sharp criticisms of the way that foreign policy is being handled here moving forward. And again, it does come as we are learning he was not on that fateful call with Ukraine.
Kristen, thank you for your reporting. Kristen Welker at the White House.
And taking a cue from history, a new Republican op-ed argues Republicans need to abandon the president now if they want to save the party. Plus, the third fundraising quarter for 2020 candidate ends tonight, and at least one Democrat is reporting it's a good bet he will be on the next debate stage. What we know so far. Next, you're watching Dolce.
Ask your doctor if starting HIV.
An inquiry into President Trump gets underway. Republicans in Congress are faced with a decision about whether to continue to defend the president or to join their Democratic colleagues in the push for impeachment, or at least an impeachment inquiry. Very few Republican lawmakers have made the decision to distance themselves from the president. Only those who have left office, like Bob Corker or Jeff Flake, or those who have switched parties or become independents, like Justin Amash, have been vocal in their critique of the president's actions concerning Ukraine.
Joining us now, Sarah Longwell, Executive Director of Defending Democracy Together and co-founder of Republicans for the Rule of Law. She is also the author of a new NBC think piece titled Republicans Who Back Impeachment Can Save the Country and the GOP. Sarah, you take the historical view of impeachment and you write this: if 2019 is like 1972, Republicans are smart to be putting space between themselves and Trump. If Romney's place in the Senate is to be the elder statesman who can help that process along, the party and the country will thank him for it, eventually. I'm looking for that space that people like Mitt Romney are creating between themselves and the president, because publicly, I don't see it. Do you?
A little bit, but I think look, I wasn't alive in the 1970s.
Sure.
But look, my history books tell me that it was not a good decade for Republicans. We took big losses in the Senate, big losses in the House. Ultimately, we lost the presidency. But the one reason that the party was able to fight its way back in the 1980s and have decades of conservative dominance was that Republicans with Nixon, they didn't go down with the ship. Right? Republicans went to him, Barry Goldwater went to him, and they said, enough is enough. You have to resign. And I think Republicans today should heed that historical lesson, because if they don't put distance, and look, they don't all have to call for impeachment right now. They just have to call for an impeachment inquiry. They just have to be responsible in this moment and say, in a bipartisan way, we're going to get to the bottom of what's happened here. That's it. They just have to be responsible.
Sarah, the interesting part, though, is back then, in 1972, Nixon was very, very popular. By the time these hearings had concluded, he was very, very unpopular. He was an albatross for Republicans. So on some level, Republicans were being heroes and doing the right things. On another, they were seeing where the wind was blowing. If you put your finger up to see where the wind is blowing right now, for some Republicans in Congress, Donald Trump is not an albatross. You have to tie yourself to him in order to survive.
Yeah, and that's why you can't look at the Republicans who are going to live by polling, even though there's polling right now that shows almost 30% of Republicans are very much in support of the impeachment inquiry. But the people you really need to look at are the ones that know how to show some semblance of moral leadership. You need to look at Mitt Romney, look at Ben Sasse, and here's what Romney can do, actually. I mean, he can go to these other adults in the Senate. He can go to Susan Collins. He can go to Ben Sasse. He can go to Lamar Alexander, and he can say, listen, the future of the party is in our hands. We have a responsibility to say that this is wrong, that it is not okay to ask a foreign country to dig up dirt on political adversaries. Enough is enough, and all they need to do is speak out. You know, my group, Republicans for the Rule of Law, has $1 million ad buy out right now when we are asking Republicans just to say something. Don't say, I haven't read the whistleblower complaint. I mean, it's only 9 pages. Go and read it. It's time to stand up and say something, Republicans.
This is interesting. So when you see this ad buy, when Republicans see this ad buy, are they going to be able to say, these are Republicans saying, let's do the right thing? Or are they going to say, Sarah Longwell's group is fringe and they're not really Republicans? People continue to accuse Republicans who are critical of Donald Trump as being Republicans in name only or not really Republicans, because the argument is that Donald Trump owns the Republican Party right now.
Yeah, sure, we're all rhinos. At least we are, look, until the polling changes to some degree and the momentum changes. I think part of what our ad campaign is really meant to do is to appeal to those Republicans who we know have a sense of duty that is bigger than just the party. The people who we know could put country over party. People like Adam Kinzinger, who came out with a tweet today and said, it's disgusting what the president said when he was retweeting somebody inciting a civil war if there's an impeachment. We're targeting those responsible Republicans that we think could stand up and say something. And if they want to dismiss us as fringe, that's fine. But I'll say that in the long term, I'm willing to bet all day long that we're right on this.
Sarah, good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us. Sarah Longwell is the Executive Director of Defending Democracy Together and the co-founder of Republicans for the Rule of Law.
All right.
Once more, trying to use a fear tactic in his own party towards saying that if y'all get rid of me, there'll be a civil war. There'll be a civil war. Right? Does that mean the sun only rises and falls on Mr. Donald Trump? It's pathetic in this man's immoral, unethical behavior. It's absolutely pathetic, and it's sickening. It's sickening because at first he really had some good ideals for the country. But now we're seeing what type of spoiled brat in his practices that he is now performing in front of the American people. And it's only the American people that's going to make the right decision, the same as the American people that made the right decision towards canning Nixon during the time that he got canned. Good luck to all of us. Thanks again for listening. Shalom. See ya.